This is Support is Sexy, episode 564, with Erica McAfee, co-founder and host of Sisters in Loss. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I hope all is well with you. I'm so happy to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And I so enjoyed our conversation today that you'll hear on the podcast with Erica McAfee. And Erica is the host and founder of Sisters in Loss. Now, the topic is a sensitive one. She's talking about miscarriages or people who have lost children in whatever way, but how she, out of that pain, created a community of women, especially women of color, or Black women specifically, who have lost children and who need a space to talk about loss, grieving, how to move beyond that, how to have their, I believe they call it your rainbow child, your child that comes after that loss, and all of the things and the emotions and the feelings and things, the ways of coping and all of that that goes into this experience, how she created, or she's creating a business, but really a community and a way for people to come together, to have a safe space to share. She's going to share some resources with us, so you can find that in the show notes for her episode. But I want you to listen to this if it's something that you can listen to. Maybe, I hope this isn't, but maybe this is something that you've gone through recently. If you have, I'm so sorry to hear that. But just know that there's a community out there, if not Erica's, I'm sure there are others, but there are communities out there where you have a safe space to talk. It's so important for us all to have that safe spaces. So I'm appreciative of Erica for creating Sisters in Loss. So now, without further ado, Erica McAfee. So Erica, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Excellent. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
I first fell in love with entrepreneurship probably when I was about 11 or 12 years old. At that time, my godmother, who has always owned an in-home daycare, really, I guess that's when that buzzword started to be coined, because she's always owned a business and she kept calling herself an entrepreneur. And I was like, well, I want to be like that. I want to own my own business where I can have, the time to be at home and be available for all of the kids in the neighborhood. And of course, her daughter and then us. So I was like, oh, I think I want to be an entrepreneur too.
Mm-hmm.
So
was it
I really fell in love with it.
Yes, interesting that at a young age you were drawn to what basically amounts to the flexibility, like owning your time.
Yeah, exactly. And she, because my mom worked a traditional job, so she would go to work every day. And then my godmom would be there for us, when before we went to school. And of course, after school, she was always there. So I always thought about, how flexible she was and just being able to be available for her family and the kids in the neighborhood. Everyone went to her house. Her house was like the hub for everybody.
Did you ever ask her anything about her business at the time? Were you aware enough to ask, what do you do or how can you be here for us all the time? Yeah.
No, I don't think I had that acumen back then to ask those questions. I think I ask those questions more so now. But
right.
No, I think I just liked the fact that she was available, because like I said, my mom worked more of a traditional 9-to-5 type of role. And, any other thing that we needed, she was my second mom. So we always used to be able to go to her. And I always knew that she would be home because she's always, she had an in-home daycare. So her kids were there with her and, she could, go around the neighborhood or do whatever and just be available for us whenever we needed, whenever my mom was not available. So I really enjoyed or thought about, oh yeah, I want to do something like this when I get older. Luckily, I didn't go there directly at first, but I'm kind of venturing back into that entrepreneurship bug. But that really sparked my interest into what entrepreneurship is and how you could work for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Now, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chesapeake, Virginia, and it's actually where I currently live now. I made my way back home. Very middle class family, and grew up around all my family. Both sides of my grandparents live in the same neighborhood, and we grew up, 5-10 minutes away from them. So it was a blessing to be able to grow up with both of my grandparents there, and then of course all of my aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff around me.
How would you describe yourself then as a young person?
As a young person, I was very much so very inquisitive. I questioned everything. That's probably why I chose the profession I did. And I was very much so into the maths and sciences. So as a 11, 12-year-old, and maybe a little older than that, as I got into high school, I can distinctly remember I had a 7th grade teacher. Either it was a 6th or 7th grade teacher that really asked us to research what we wanted to be. And at that time, my grandfather was going through a double hip replacement. So I knew I really wanted to do something in the math and sciences, and they knew that I had an acronym for it and I was really good in it. So my teacher was just like, why don't you consider being an engineer? And I was like, I'm kind of curious of what engineers do. And then, like I said, my grandfather had a hip replacement, and I was just so fascinated with the fact that they were taking, something that was man-made and actually inserting it into my grandfather's hip. And that was going to help him move and get about and get around. So I really dug into exactly what type of engineers make artificial limbs and artificial organs, and really have this drive to be a biomedical engineer. And essentially that's what I did. I from 6th to 7th grade, I was like, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a biomedical engineer. I'm going to help people like they helped my grandfather so that he could be able to walk better. And I stuck with it all the way to college.
Really? So in college, did you study engineering?
I did. I ended up changing my major from biomedical engineering to chemical engineering, which is a little bit more broader, and stuck with it. I graduated as a chemical engineer and then went to work in industry as a chemical engineer. Yep.
Wow. So what college did you go to?
I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, out of Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, okay. I went to Hampton.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So you're
Yay, from the area. That's
from
right.
The area. Yeah, exactly.
So what exactly does a chemical engineer do?
So a chemical engineer really, the main process is the best way to describe it is that, we have products that are out there that are typically made like in-house on a small scale. So say if someone was trying to make a beauty or a hair care product in their kitchen, a chemical engineer would take it and scale it to make it on a mass market. So from your small little batch that you make in the kitchen to be able to scale it in the mass market and to make it on a manufacturing scale. So they take it from a small product to a big product. And then of course they manage that entire chemical process from things that come in the process to the out the process to the raw materials, things that take, and then all of the safety and environmental aspects that go along with it. And most engineers in general go into some type of business role because it's not just the technical knowledge, it's also learning about the business and how you're managing, major budgets for some of the projects that you're doing. So VCU in particular has a school where they couple the engineering and business students so they can do projects together, because essentially that's what engineers do out in the workplace. So that is what a chemical engineer does. And then what I do kind of in my day job, I do a lot of environmental and safety type of work around the chemical processes at the plant I work at.
Okay. So how does entrepreneurship then play into your life today as being an engineer?
So I always say, like, I'm an engineer by day. So that's my day job. And then at night, of course, I haven't transitioned into full-time entrepreneurship, but I do coaching and consulting. And of course, I host conferences and retreats in my side business, which is called Sisters in Loss, which is a podcast and a coaching services for women who have gone through pregnancy loss and infertility.
Did you ever imagine, I guess you couldn't really imagine, but have you ever thought about the fact that now you have a business coaching service and the podcast about women childbirth, child loss, and infertility. And it's interesting that you so admired your godmother when you were younger, who was taking care of children when they were younger as they were growing up. I just always love to look at these sort of full circle or half circle, at least, moments where the things that influenced us when we were younger kind of play into our work today.
It does. And it's interesting that all of that does come full circle, because I guess back then, just the naivete of just having children, you never really know how difficult it is for someone to have kids. And, she always had kids in and out of her daycare, from, babies, 6 weeks old all the way to, us who were, before and after school care type of children. So yes, it comes around full circle, because now I know just how precious it is to create a life, having lost children myself, and then now coaching women through the infertility process. It is extremely precious to have children, and just be able to create life, and then, have your kids here to love on them and to care for them. And then on the other side, to have a daycare provider that loves on them and cares for them as much as you do. And, trusting someone to put, to have your child there for 8 hours a day while you go and do work. So yes, it is definitely a full circle moment that I'm doing very similar work, but just in a different way.
So tell us then what you mentioned some of it, but what inspired you to create a business or an offering really with Sisters in Loss?
So I felt, so back in 2012, I lost my son at birth. And I was the first person in my circle of friends who had a child, who had been pregnant, had a child. And then to experience a loss like that, it really devastated me, my husband, my family. And I just knew that there were other women who looked like me who had experienced something like that, but I just didn't know how to reach out to them. At that time, Facebook groups weren't really all that popular. Instagram was just really up and coming. So there was really no outlet for me at that time. And I wanted to be able to create an outlet for women, Black women in particular, to be open and just discussing their lost journeys or their journeys to motherhood in general. And then, of course, if they've experienced a miscarriage, or infant loss, stillbirth, to talk about those openly and share those experiences, because I truly believe that there is power in sharing your story. There's power in sharing your testimony, and that someone will be healed as well as you being healed by sharing your story. So the other thing that was real niche for me about specifically targeting Black women is because we experience loss 3 and 4 times more than our white counterparts. The statistics say, 1 in 4 women experience a miscarriage, or 1 in 8 couples experience some type of infertility. But in the African American community in particular, those numbers are smaller. And a lot of Black women have underlying health conditions, whether it's uterine fibroids or polycystic ovarian syndrome, or all of these other concerns that could aid and could factor into what's causing them to have miscarriages or to have some type of infertility. So I wanted to be able to give us a safe place, really, so that we could all talk about all of those issues that we're having, how we're managing our grief and our healing after loss. And then if we're having a pregnancy after we've lost, how are we really going through and dealing with the anxiety and fear of having a subsequent pregnancy after loss? And then now we're all talking about parenting after loss. How, for those women who do have children after they've had loss, how are they parenting their children, their miracle children? How are they managing that process? So it's just providing a safe space for that, and then giving the women who want to share the opportunity to share their stories so that it can impact and heal others.
And do you think having a community has been helpful to the women who are speaking out or who are connecting? Because back, like you said, when you started this, the Instagram was just getting started. There weren't Facebook groups, or maybe they were just getting started. But do you think now that we do have tools like that, especially Facebook groups where you can make it private, that you see women sort of sharing maybe in a way they hadn't shared before?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when women do join our Facebook group, it's almost like, no holds bar. Women share
Mm-hmm.
all of their deepest, if they're having a bad day, if they have something that triggers them, whether it's like an anniversary date or a birthday, or just seeing other babies around them, they share that in the group. And a lot of women rally around them, whether it's just for prayer or just to share their stories on how they're dealing with whatever triggers or grief that they have going on currently. So yes, it gives women a safe space so they know that they're not alone and that, they're not all in their head with their crazy thoughts. You
Right.
have some other people who understand exactly what that feels like, and we can help you manage through that.
Something that you mentioned that I don't have children, but something that I had never thought about, a lot more women now, I think, are talking about losing a child or miscarriages and that kind of thing. But you mentioned parenting after losing a child. So you lost a child, but then maybe you have a child after, or you lose a child in between. That's something I never heard. And maybe people do speak about it, but I never heard someone mention that as something that, women or families have to deal with as well. Because you still have lost
Absolutely.
one child. Like you mentioned, you lost a child. I know you have a son now, right? That you call your rainbow child or something like that.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, exactly. So the rainbow baby terminology is that it is your rainbow after your storm. So after
Right.
your storm of losses, this is your rainbow that God has granted you as your miracle baby. But yes, so that is a lot. That is a hot topic in this lost community right now. Is talking about
Mm-hmm.
parenting after loss, because a lot of people who had children before their loss or children after their loss, it's a different style of parenting because you still have that anxiety and that fear in your heart that you could possibly lose this child that you have in front of you. So you may parent differently. You may parent a little more sternly. So it's just an open conversation to see how people are navigating life as a parent after they lost a child. So yes, it's something that we talk about in our community all the time, and everyone has different approaches to it. And I think that's the part I love about having support and having a community of women with all different backgrounds. We all can jump in and share our experiences with how we parent and things of that nature.
And the Facebook group is called Sisters in Loss also?
Correct. Yeah. Sisters
Okay.
in Loss. And people can go to sistersinloss.com to join the Facebook group.
Okay. And we'll make sure for everyone listening, we have links to that, but just in case people wanted to know right away. And then you also have a podcast called Sisters in Loss. So what made you decide to start a podcast of all the platforms out there?
Yeah, so I believe there is power in sharing your story and sharing your testimony. And I love storytelling. I love podcasts, first and foremost. I love
Mm-hmm.
Support is Sexy.
Thank you.
I love all the other entrepreneurship podcasts. I listen to business. I listen to all kinds of podcasts. And I just felt like there was a need for our stories to be told in this facet. So I wanted to create a podcast that actually was a storytelling podcast, but it also shared kind of the behind the scenes thoughts, women who had actually gone to therapy, how their relationship was with God, how their relationship was with their partner or their spouse, really digging deep into how they grieved and how they healed after their losses. And then really just talking about what motivates and what encourages them to continue on their journey. So I wanted to create a space for that. And when I was looking for podcasts that talked about loss, a lot of podcasts are out there about infertility, but they really weren't talking about that whole journey to motherhood, because everyone has a story about their journey, whether, like I said, a lot of Black women do have underlying issues like fibroids and PCOS and endometriosis. A lot of those play a role into how you get pregnant and how you stay pregnant. And then, of course, how you bring a baby home. So I wanted to talk about all of those issues and how it really affected Black women. And then, of course, I said the healing process after loss.
And you mentioned fibroids, PCOS. Is that what you said?
Right. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yes.
Okay. PCOS. And then I've heard of endometriosis, right? Right. Okay. PCOS. Okay. I'll make sure I have links to all these things so people can, if they don't know about them. provide that information. So tell me then, did you think about with your podcast and just in general, you have your own story, as we mentioned, and you have dealt with your own loss. And I know you're trying again now. I listened to your latest episode, going through that process. But did you have any concerns about sharing your personal story?
I did in the beginning because, it's very personal to me and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once I sat down with him and actually talked to him and told him really what I felt like I was called to do, he was more in agreement. He was pushing me more out there to share more because he knows, and just like I know, as much as we share, it just breaks down those walls and it opens people up to share their journeys. And someone can really be healed by just something small that I say about my journey so far. So yeah, my husband and I are on an infertility journey. I lost my uterus in my pregnancy with my rainbow baby, my son Maxwell. So I have I have the ability to conceive, but not naturally. So we have to go through either a gestational carrier or a surrogate, or we are considering adoption. So both of those routes we're going down to grow our family. So it's going to be, I'm going to document it on the podcast, but it's just something near and dear to me because a lot of the women that are in my community also are going through infertility battles, whether it's through some of those underlying issues like I talked to you before, or their infertility is just not explained.
Mm-hmm.
And for those listeners who are unfamiliar with infertility is basically when you and your partner have been trying for more than a year and you have not conceived yet. So that's what diagnoses you as infertile. But a lot of those can be other underlying issues that you would have to go and get more visits, more specialized tests and things to actually understand and be diagnosed from. But a lot of infertility is unexplained. And
Which is so frustrating, right?
Right. It's extremely frustrating for those who have been trying for 3, 4, 5 years and just still have done all this, spent all this money on tests and still are still just trying to get pregnant. So I think that sharing my story and my journey is going to help them as they go through their journey and for them to not be afraid of using what God has given us through engineers and scientists and doctors,
mm-hmm.
so that, babies can be formed and created in a different manner. And I think that that's really the point of me sharing my journey up to now is to tell people that there's more than one path to motherhood. You don't have to, get pregnant the conventional way. Someone else can carry a child for you. And there's so many children in the United States that could be adopted. So you could go that route as well.
Yes. And nothing taught, like I said, I don't have children, but I did freeze my eggs when I was younger, but nothing taught me what you just mentioned about the path to motherhood that better than one of my best friends. She was infertile or what's the word, diagnosed as infertile. And her sister carried the child that is now my goddaughter. So her sister was her gestational carrier. And at first it was like, what? Trying to understand it. Then I thought, no, this makes perfect sense. Her sister is able to carry, and she did that as a gift to my best friend. And now we have a beautiful child in the family. You know what I mean? So like you said, there's so many paths, and it doesn't have to look. And I would imagine, not speaking from experience, but I would imagine for a lot of women getting beyond that idea that it has to look this way. I think for a lot of us with everything, sometimes we have to get beyond the idea that it has to look this way or it has to happen this way. And as you said, for all the women to catch, there's a lot of paths to motherhood. There's a lot of paths to a lot of things if we kind of open up. And I understand sometimes that takes, some healing and getting through some things before you can get there, but it's possible.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. And then also kind of to your point about freezing your eggs and understanding that your fertility starts when you are of childbearing age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother part of the podcast that we talk about is just, understanding and knowing your body, knowing your cycles, knowing, when to get off of birth control and understanding that your fertility starts at childbearing age. And if you do want to have children in the future and you should be planning for your family, in that regard. So if you do want to freeze your eggs, to do so before you get over that childbearing age, which that magic number for most doctors is 35, so that you can have, healthy eggs for when you do want to carry a child in the future. So yes, we talk about all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
And on the podcast.
It's funny. My doctor at the time in New York, Dr. Robin Brown, I love her. Look her up if you're looking for a doctor. She had been telling me for years to freeze my eggs. But at the time, I was young and, well, not really that young, but 30s. But dating someone, I was always seeing somebody and, it's okay. It'll happen. Yeah, it'll happen. I guess she'd be like, okay. And this was before freezing your eggs became, I won't say popular, but as well known, or people weren't as conscious of it as they are now, right? So she'd be saying it, and I'd be thinking, I don't need to do that. Oh no, I got time. And then I remember that last relationship broke up, and I was just like, okay, I think I'm ready. Like, let's do this. Because I was 30. I think she started telling me this when I was 30, as you said, 35 or so. And I did it at 2012, I guess 39. So that was kind of late, actually. So it took, but for years, and I share that because I waited for years to do it. And, thank God everything worked out. But she had been telling me all along, and I kept thinking, no, I got time. But as you said, we have the opportunity to, if we're in the position to, whether that's financially or through your insurance, I was able to use insurance for some of it, to figure out a way to help ourselves in the future when it comes to what we want parenthood or that kind of thing to look like. So even if you're not sure, if you decide to go ahead and freeze your eggs, then you can at least have that as an option. And some people freeze embryos. I'm sure you talk about this all in your group too. Some people freeze embryos. I just froze eggs. So there's, again, as we said, a lot of different paths. There's plenty of ways to explore options. And for everyone listening, I'll have as many links as I can find. And if you have any resources that you want to share with me, Erica, please just send me some links and we'll just share them with everybody on your show notes page.
Absolutely, yes. And my plan is to freeze embryos,
right,
for a later gestational carrier for us. So yes, exactly, yes. So we all have to take control over our woman, whether or not you're looking to be a mom right now. But like Elayne did, she went ahead and froze her eggs. But we should all just think about those things. Those are things that we should be thinking about now, for sure.
Right, and like you said, science is here to help. Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with science and prayer, right?
Nope, nothing wrong with it.
So now you mentioned in a recent episode that you are team surrogacy over team adoption. So why is that?
So
for you,
for me, I am team surrogacy, mainly because either way, I feel like you said, science is good, but at the core of both journeys, prayer and stepping out on faith is needed, because you never know what could happen with an adoption agency or even a gestational carrier, because gestational carrier could also miscarry or have some kind of loss. So I'm putting my faith into a gestational carrier when God sends that person for us. But we also are going to go the adoption route at the same time. So we both have decided. I think that I'm more thinking, oh yeah, we're gonna have an embryo that's our DNA that comes through someone else, and we'll be able to have a child that way. And my husband's very much so, because we have some friends who have fostered to adopt. My husband's like, we can have all the kids we want through adoption. So that's
right, all the babies.
Right, all the babies come all to us. So he's more towards team adoption than surrogacy. So that's just kind of how we are. But we both know that we want to grow our family. So whatever way God sees fit first, that's the way we're gonna go. But I'm more I want a child with my DNA, even though I would love a child through adoption, just like they were my own. But I'm just gonna put it in God's hands. Whichever one works out for us is what we're gonna do. If they both work out at the same time, then we'll have
all the babies.
Oh yeah, we'll have a baby through surrogacy, a baby through adoption, and it'll be a blessing to grow our family regardless.
Now, through surrogacy, do you go through an agency for anyone listening who may not have considered?
So there are a few options to go through for surrogacy. So you can go through an agency where agency will match you up with the actual gestational carrier.
Which is different than surrogacy, right? Gestational carrier. Yeah, surrogacy is right. Okay. My friend taught me that.
Yes, there is a difference between surrogacy and a gestational carrier, based on the egg and the sperm and things like that. But I basically am going to have a actual gestational carrier because they're going to have my full embryo with my husband and his sperm. So we can go through an agency and they can find us one, or we can do like your friend did, your best friend did, where she finds someone who is, close to them or an immediate family or friend who's willing to carry for them. And they just have to meet a certain criteria to be a surrogate, whether it's, within childbearing age, finish having their own children, and then not have any major pregnancy complications with their previous children. So if they meet those criteria, they typically are cleared for surrogacy. And then, of course, they do some other, hormonal testing and things like that, genetic testing, just to make sure they're good before they actually implant an embryo into you. But yes, you can go through an agency, or you can go through an agency. Makes it easier because an agency will support that person who's actually carrying your baby, giving them all of the tools that they need, whether it's a psychiatric exam. They'll give them, agency typically also has lawyers, so they'll help draw out contracts.
Right.
It is a contract. It's a legal binding document to sign over this baby that someone else birthed to you, even though that's your egg and your egg and sperm. And an agency kind of does all the background work versus if you had someone that you knew. You would actually have to go get your own lawyers and things like that to sign up, to draw a contract out and do all the legality stuff. So agency just makes it a little bit more cut and dry, I guess, black and white, versus with someone personally, you would have to go out and get all of the documentation taken care of so that there's no questions about, who's paying for what with their compensation packages, et cetera, et cetera. So.
What would you say is the business model for Sisters in Loss, or do you feel it's more of a passion project? Is this something you want to focus on as your business?
Yeah, so so it's turning from a passion project to a business for sure. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, a lot of group coaching, and I think that it's gonna mold into definitely a coaching and signature service type of business, where I'm doing, overall group coaching for women. And then, of course, having, subsequent conferences and retreats and bringing women together in that regard.
I can see you, not trying to put anything else on your plate, Erica, but I could see you too getting I guess like a counseling, if you don't already have like a counseling license or something like that, because I just feel like it would all combine with what you're doing and you being able
to
counsel women as well.
Absolutely. And it's something that I'm considering going back and doing something more specific in counseling, but also working on my doula certification. For those who aren't sure what a doula is basically a support person during pregnancy, pre-pregnancy, postpartum. And then, of course, in my case, I would really focus on pregnancy loss and infertility and being there for someone who is going through pregnancy after loss, and then those women who are being supported through infertility. And then, of course, on the backside, if there is some type of death or bereavement, that I would be that support person there. So I'm going through a doula certification right now currently, and definitely see some counseling in my future as well. So you put it out there in the atmosphere.
There you go. Where are you? Are you still in Virginia now? Based in Virginia?
Yeah. Okay. In Virginia, yes.
I was going to say, I could connect you with the women. I interviewed the two women who own the doula agency For Your Birth, which is based in, I think it's based in New York, but I think they work with people everywhere, but maybe there's a connection there where you could be a service to them. So I'll connect you all after this.
Sweet. That works out well. Yes.
Yeah. What would you say your hope is for the work that you do and how you want to really impact and inspire women dealing with loss or infertility?
My hope is that women who come into the Sisters in Loss community feel embraced virtually or physically, that they feel that they have a a support system where they're supporting them not only on their journey, their healing journey, but they're supporting them through life. Because as many of you, your listeners know, if you lose someone, whether it's a child or someone close to you, you typically aren't the same person you are after your loss. So really helping them navigate on this journey to being a better woman, a better person, a better entrepreneur, a better wife, a better mom, and for them to leave the community every day knowing that they have a group of sisters who can be their sounding board, who understand what they're going through. They may not be their best friends, but they're still there to support them through this journey. So overall, that they're not alone, that we hear them, that we understand them, and that we'll love on them no matter what they're going through.
So if you think of your life, Erica, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
I would thank my mother, mainly because she has not only been there throughout my journey and my story, but that she understands how critical it is to talk about my journey. And I think she understood it way before I did. Something that I most recently came across, my mom had wrote out every detail of my pregnancies and my losses, like my hospital stays, like everything's completely documented. And I didn't I appreciate that now. You know, she recently gave me all this documentation. Like she had it all written down in her iPad, you know, what the doctor's name was. It was chronologically by time. Like she was very detailed with that. And I didn't know I needed that until I needed it. And I was very thankful for her being so attentive to that and understanding that, and it may have been just how she was grieving and going through as well. And she just wanted to make sure she captured everything so she wouldn't forget. But it really helped me on just going back and looking at my overall journey and understanding how the losses impacted me. And then how can I be of service to help others? Because at the end of the day, what I'm doing now is to service others. You know, how can I support other women who have gone through what I've gone through? And how can I be supportive like my mom was during my journey, even though she may not have understood exactly what she was doing, but she was very, very critical into helping me heal and helping me get to a place where I can be of service to other women. So I would definitely thank my mom for just being her and just being excellent in everything she does.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Now, what are the ways that we can support you? Tell everyone, like I said, I'll have links to things, but tell everyone website, any social media, or any place you want us to go.
Sure. Well, my website is ericambmcafee.com. And that's where my home is for pretty much everything that goes on within the Sisters in Loss community. Like we talked before, you can find the Sisters in Loss Facebook group. It's a private community at sistersinloss.com. And then I'm everywhere on social at Erica M. McAfee. And I always tell people that my last name is just like the antivirus, but we don't have any relation. So MC capital AFEE, Erica M. McAfee, everywhere on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, as well as YouTube. And then you can find the Sisters in Loss podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can find us there.
Excellent. Erica, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and something so personal, and not even just with us, but then creating a space and a community for women who are going through the same thing to be able to connect.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Do not be afraid to niche down in your offering, in your specialization, because you just never know what other branches that can open up in your business, in your community, in the support that you have in your entrepreneurship journey.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Erica. To find out more about her and to find out more about Sisters in Loss, just go to supportissexy.com, go to that search icon, and just type in Erica, Erica. Her show notes page will pop up with links, resources, and ways to find out more about her and again about Sisters in Loss. Supportissexy.com and just search Erica. Thank you again so much for listening. I love being able to share the stories of these women who are creating powerful businesses with just powerful spaces for other women and for other people in general. It's just a passion, and I'm so excited to do it, and I'm so excited to have you here to listen. So now, until we chat again, always remember, support is sexy, and having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone. And I'll chat with you soon. Take care.